Yo, what's up guys? New video talking about the Rune Optimizer, and it's been quite a while since I made a video about the Rune Optimizer. Really long time. But this video is just going to be 5 tips that you probably didn't know for using the Rune Optimizer, so I'm not going over the super basic stuff like how to get a bolt and that kind of stuff. If you would like me to do that, leave that in the comments down below as well. Also, if you have any tips that are not mentioned within this video, leave those in the comments down here as well, and I might make a second part. So the first one is how to grind runes in the Rune Optimizer. I loaded in like an older JSON of mine, so I don't show anything I don't want to show. What I do is I go to the Rune tab and I use this one. There is an option to use this one, for example, but this one is actually really shitty. You would have to find like a specific unit, and you have to check like, oh, can I actually grind something? And then you have to apply that and blah, blah, too much effort, way too much effort. It's way easier just to look from the runes. So we can actually look from a grind. We can say, okay, mostly I start all the way at the bottom because the enchants are at the top, the grinds are at the bottom. In most cases, you place more grinds than you place enchants. You just place this and you just start checking like, okay, this one, I could place it on this Reno here. This has a rune that has some potential, but it's not too great. And so forth. So let's say will defense. Okay, we can check. I could place it on this one. That's not that great. I can place it on this one. That's a 7. And it has a 27 speed. So that one is very valid to get your grind zone. Thing is, you do have to keep in mind is that I'm selecting by max efficiency right now. If a rune is completely ungrinded yet, the max efficiency is somewhat low. So for that reason, the moment I get a rune, I mostly start grinding something right away. And it keeps kind of track for me, like what kind of stuff I have to grind, rather than you taking screenshots of what you have to grind or writing it down somewhere. I use this to check. Sometimes I check like, okay, highest speeds. Let me check for speeds. Okay, maybe you can see something that can use something. I could use it on this one, could use it on these two that are like this one has a lot of potential because this one for efficiency has more potential, but technically this one has a 27 speed on an HP slot 6, which has a higher value for that, right? So for that I can take that, and then you just start selecting like next rune, next rune. It takes a good amount of time to actually select that. In this iteration I have a few speed bio slots apparently, but yeah, as you can see I couldn't really place it at anything too much useful. Like the highest was this one, which is a slot 2 defense, which doesn't really matter too much. So yeah, that's the thing how I place my grinds. So the next one is kind of related to this as well, also towards grinds. Let me actually find a rune that has like a decent example. This one is a good example. So here we have a rune that is a slot 3. It has the HP, speed, and defense stat in there, but it is all non-grinded. If I would like to see like, okay, what's the max potential for this rune? If it's max grinded, a very easy way is to just change the stats. So in my case, most of the things end up at least hero grind. So this would be a 15, that would be a 22 and a 27. And in this case, let's say we remove this for flat HP and I get like a 900 flat HP or like 1000 flat HP is doable. So these are all hero grinds. It's just calculated by myself. And once we save that, we scroll back to the bottom. We do actually have to find that rune again because it resets all of the values, which is somewhat annoying. But I think we can find this one pretty fast because it's actually, whoops, that was the wrong, okay. You should not put 1000 HP percent. That doesn't really work that way. But here we can see the rune already. Like, okay, if I start actually grinding that rune, it can follow up in like quite some of my good runes. It's not the best. The speed is somewhat low, but if I want like a semi-tanky kind of rune, I can check out these kind of things. And that's just a simple way how you can check like your potential for your runes. You could also say like, oh, what if it actually goes like max legendary on everything? Not that I would throw like multiple max legendaries on that shit to test it out, but it could be my second best rune for like the potential. It would be nice if that would actually be a very nice thing. I will suggest that to Sandro. I want another tab which has the max potential on highest grinds, including enchant. That would be dope. I'm gonna ask that if they're gonna make that. Sandro, if you're watching this, probably you're not, but that's something I will ask because I think that's pretty useful, because then you can go for the grinding potential. You can actually select by grinding potential, and for that you can actually find grinds even easier. So that's my second tip. My third tip is you can actually calculate your artifact damage within the Rune Optimizer. But let me show you how. I have this Juno right here that's in normal. This is not how my Juno is built, but let me actually make the Juno on the best build possible for a Despair Revenge. So let's say this is the Juno build I want to go with. I didn't select any artifacts as of yet right now. But let's go with these runes. I can equip them, but the thing which you actually want to do with this, if you want to calculate your artifact damage, is you want to include them all. So if we click on each and single one of them in the include, which is going to make it a lot easier to calculate the artifact damage. So if we go back to the Juno right here, and we select force to these units to be included. So this is the rune build that will always be used. Now we can do this without, but then you see that the number of estimates is going to be very freaking high. So if we select it like this, if we select the damage calculation, we go for like the normal 30%, we go for critics, we don't go for armor break. If you put armor break, it kind of slows you like a little bit less of what it could do. If we do this, we hit calculate, let's say we want the artifacts with the highest damage. You can see right now that it doesn't change the build in any case. There were no artifacts selected before. And here within the numbers, you can actually see the plus 931 extra damage is the additional damage it will do. It does also calculate in crit damage if I'm not mistaken. But this is like 900 damage for each of these artifacts. And if we check the artifacts right here, we can see that well, it has some crit damage as one, which I think is calculated in there as well. You do have to keep that in mind, but well, for some of these articles, if you have max crit rate, it's actually pretty valuable to do that. So in case like you have a unit that doesn't crit that much, you just put the crit rate on average or even normal that you expect it not to crit. And then you can see it, what's the difference between like which artifact. So I can see like this artifact, for example, is doing less than this artifact, for example, but probably mainly because of the crit damage. But that's how you can check your damage increase from artifacts. Of course, this also works with the Lushen, but you kind of have to check. I think if you select skill 3, then it will also take the skill 3 crit damage. I think it's smart enough to do that. I'm pretty sure. So let's say you do that for a Lushen. Let's actually do it for a Lushen real quick, because I think most people are more interested about Lushen. So first of all, we disable the artifacts because it's just easier to find your normal build that way. Because let's say I would do the whole build. Let's say I have to put this on 50. Yes, I have the pro version, so it's a bit faster. But if I disable this right now, it's like 2 trillion. Yeah, we're not gonna get through that like in a million years. That's really not going to happen. So we select everything that makes sense for this. We have attack buff, we have that. Attack buff, yes please. That, we crit, yes sir, yes sir. Okay, we apply all of that. We search for a build, which might take a few seconds because I didn't. If you want that's a very slight shit in between. Currently, it takes quite a few seconds to actually calculate all of your things. If you don't have the pro version, this is going to take a while, especially if you want to show this many builds. It took like 14 seconds. But let's say we started off with like saying like, okay, we only want everything to show from, like, you can let it run for like a few seconds with a lower focus. And then if you select it, you can see that this already goes quite fast, and then you can check like, okay, 2.9 is the highest. So we can actually say 2.9 this, and then you can increase the focus to even more. Because currently it will only select one build because it's actually the highest, but you can see how fast it is if it doesn't have to load in all of the builds. So this apparently is our fastest build for the Lushen. Let's equip those runes, let's lock those runes. And mainly what's important is let's include all of those runes. So this is a Lushen without any artifacts. We include all of the runes and we force them to be selected in there. We change that to use artifacts, to actually calculate artifacts. And we can select it and we can see that we have like some damage increases here. Which you can see that these artifacts right here that are included at 2.6k to the skill 3. You can even say, like, let's say, so these are probably my best artifacts that I have on this one right now. Let's say I specifically want to hit water with this one. You can even select that, and probably if there's some water damage one that would hit more, it probably pops up as well. Yeah, you can see here, the water extra damage on, or from wind extra damage on water is now the highest damage build that's in there. So with that, you can actually calculate your artifact damage pretty effectively within the Rune Optimizer. Okay, so speed tuning with less units, that's another tip. What you often have is, let's say you have a Pisama, you have a xxKilla, you have a Lushen, and you have a, what's it called, Dova, or you have like a Tion or anything like that. So what happens in this case, let's say this one is like 330, and then this one is supposedly 277, and then so on, it works. So looking at this, I need a 278 Dova to catch up with a xxKilla that's this speed. But actually that is not true. Because of all of the units being here, it expects the speed ticks to like be calculated throughout the 4 units. If I remove 1 unit, you can already see that the speed tick becomes lower. If I remove another unit, you can see that the speed tick becomes lower. However, in this case, I cannot show the speed lead. What you can do is you just make this 48, which equals to the speed lead. So actually, I'll only need a 251 Dova to catch up with this. The main reason for that is I don't need the whole team to move. I only need xxKilla to move on the speed lead, which I added in here. Then I need Dova to move, and then the Lushen moves 100%. And if the Pisama doesn't catch up, I don't give a shit. So that's how you calculate your speed ticks with less units. You just remove the units, you add in the speed lead in here if that's needed. And that only works, it doesn't work for Galleon teams where, let's say you have a Galleon team, and you want your whole team to move, but you don't care about the speed lead moving. So let's say Galleon, Pisama, Tiana, and we go for, let's say, a Zyros. We add in the speed lead. We can see like, okay, so if your Tiana is, let's say, 310, then your Galleon has to be 351, and this thing has to be like 261. So let's make this slightly higher so it makes sense. But we don't really care if this one catches up as well. So we can, again, remove that. We can check like, okay, currently it's a bit less. Okay, I still had this one added in, which made it a little bit higher. Wait, that's a bad example. Because we add in speed lead twice. Do keep that in mind. So we have this, let's say the let's just make it simple, like 260. But we outspeed that heavily. So 261. We switch that out. We put it in here. You can actually see that there's a slight difference. So I only need a 250 Zyros if I don't care about Pisama moving. So Pisama moving makes it that Zyros has to be at an earlier tick to also move like faster and that kind of stuff. So in this case, if I just care about these 3 units moving and I don't care about the speed lead moving, this is an option to do, which makes it easy to ruin your Zyros. However, you do get an issue if you actually need that Pisama damage in there. But that is a way how to calculate your speed tuning with less units. Let's say I want to create a Poseidon, but I want it actually to be 100 crit rate and then similar stats. And I don't want it, I'm not sure if I can run it on Despair, but I'm actually not sure if I can run it on like any of these stats. You kind of need the pro version to do this like I am doing right now, because you can already see, let's disable this, 8 billion. There's a lot of calculations in here. But how you limit your search is just make it very easy to put in more filters. The moment you put in more filters, because if I hit run right now, this thing is going to be like taking like forever to actually get any builds or anything like that. Of course, we can select in this, and it's already going to limit it by quite some. But you can see that this is still taking a long time. It's going through a lot of builds and that kind of stuff. What you can do is actually check like, okay, current highest damage on this. Okay, it's an old damage setup, but it doesn't really matter. Let's say we select this damage setup. Let's also select like, okay, the lowest speed or the fastest speed that I saw here. Let's add in these 2 values and actually continue to search. So with this, you can already say that it's taking a lot less time, but it's still finding like a lot of builds. Like, okay, sure, it's maybe not the best thing to leave this thing empty. That's probably not the best thing at all. It's really having some trouble finding some shit. So you can actually test like, okay, if we stop this, this is apparently not finding anything. It's just a focus. Let's say I force in the focus just to make it a lot easier. So let's force in the focus. We are allowed to use any runes. Okay, this already lowers that by quite some. We check a bunch more bolts and we can actually see like, okay, we also have to use a blade one apparently. So we can actually also say like, okay, well, let's go for blade and let's add in like 500. Is that allowed? Let's see if that's allowed. Let's see how far we go. So in this case, this is one of the ways, maybe this is not the best example, but these steps is something I go through to actually find like better builds like over and over just to see until like, what's the max potential? And apparently this is the best build I can make on like 100 crit rate and 85 accuracy. I could also say like, oh, maybe I can actually fix some accuracy from like the AKS3. Let's say we lower that by a bit. Let's see how much the damage increases. We're looking at a 8086. Let's hit that up again. And apparently we're finding a whole bunch more bolt yet. So it's maybe worth it to not go crit damage on the skill 3, but actually go on like accuracy skill 3, because let's say I have a 25 accuracy skill 3, because I still want that maxed. And then we can see, okay, I can add like 400 damage like based on that, which is like something, that's just something you can work with to limit your input, to limit your output values and therefore make the whole optimizer faster. Also keep in mind, I do have the Pro version, which is a lot faster than the normal version. But yeah, that's just something you could get if you would like to. So if you have any more tips about the Rune optimizer, let me know in the comments. If you like this video, also like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave it in the comments if you want to see more of this kind of stuff as well. Thanks for watching, and see you later.